Hello and welcome back to the Will I Vike It podcast. Today I am at Prehistorisch Dorp in the Netherlands and my guests are Maartje and Niels. And I came over to talk to them because they've been doing some historical beer brewing.
That's right. Yes, this is our second brew of this weekend. Yesterday we just tried out. It was just a total experiment, and with what we've learned from yesterday, we're going to retry it today. Well, not
Yeah.
retry it, redo it today.
So what happened to yesterday's?
Well, actually, we did get a brew. It looked totally different than what you'd brew normally.
Yeah.
It wasn't nice yellowish moist, but it was gooey, grayish, sticky stuff.
Do you think would that be more like what a historical beer would have been like though, or is that just something went wrong?
Combination.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be as sticky, I think, but the color would not have been as nice and clear as we used to now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But then again, you drink it from a mug and not from a glass. You
So
won't
you
see
can't
the
see it.
difference.
Yeah. And there is a thing, I don't know if it's a thing here, but in England there's a sort of revival of like ciders that are cloudy. So maybe they had a cloudy beer.
We'll see.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
It perhaps. I think it also has to do with the grain we used. We used what's the half in English again?
The oats
The-
probably made it more cloudy and sticky, especially since we don't do any mash steps, but we just ramp up the temperature till boil,
Okay. Yeah.
which doesn't help. And then we leave the grains in while boiling,
Yeah.
which also doesn't help, but that's the recipe that we have. So
So where's the recipe from that you're using?
The recipe is from the 1450s, and it's quite fun. It was accumulated by the University of Ghent, now in Belgium, but back then borders were a bit different, of course.
Yeah.
It was accumulated by them in the 18th century. And it was like a manuscript of all kinds of recipes. I think about 500 old recipes, all written in something called Middle Netherlands, Middle Dutch,
Right.
which was the handwriting between 1200 and 1500s. So for a very long time they thought it was a recipe of the 14th century. And that had, I'm not entirely sure anymore why it was. I can't really explain why that was, but
Yeah.
later on they started actually looking at what the recipe was about, how it was the beer was brewed, and then they figured that because of this characteristics, they could place it in the 15th century, around 1450, because there was they made use of certain grains that only started to be used around 1400.
Okay.
And the recipe, we use a lot of this grain. It's gerst.
yeah,
In the-
barley.
Barley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we use
Because
barley.
we made beers with just oats,
Yeah.
because that's what's grown here,
Yeah.
and barley was introduced later on.
Okay.
Yeah, it was only
Yeah.
until 1400 we used barley, and the amount of barley suggests that they already knew what to do with barley.
Yeah.
So they had some experience with it. And also it's on the border of starting to using hops instead of myrtle for beer to conservate it.
Yeah.
And this recipe uses both. And that's because of that change was going on. That's why it was easier to place it, to stick a year on it.
So is this like the earliest recipe we have for a beer from this?
From the Netherlands, yes.
Yeah.
This is the earliest recipe that's written down.
Okay. Yeah.
And what's fun about it, and also got us a lot of migraines, is that it's very unclear, a very unclear recipe. It doesn't say how much grains we should put in, how much hops, how much myrtle, or how much of the sourdough, and it just doesn't say it. It just says put it all in a keg, in a bowl,
Yeah.
put water in it, add everything, stir, cook it, and after 3 days you have beer.
So it kind of assumes you know what you're doing.
Yes,
Roughly.
Yeah,
Yeah. We find that with early food recipes as well. There's a
Right.
lot of like the earliest English recipes, and they just they assume a lot. They just
Yeah.
make this or do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we discovered yesterday is that they probably have used a filter in some way
Right.
to filter the grain out of the beer. And it wasn't in the recipe, so we were not really prepared. I did bring some linen cloth
Yeah.
that we could use as a filter, because when you're home brewing, you filter your beer as well. So I was like, okay, what would be suitable for this age? Probably linen cloth. I can bring that. I've got plenty.
Yeah.
So in the end, we decided to add the step to filter it through the linen cloth.
Yeah. I wonder if they would have used any like finings. Do you know what I mean by finings? Where they had like these days people use like clay and stuff, don't they,
Yeah.
to drop all the sediment out.
Yeah. But
Yep.
that's the thing. We don't know if there's ingredients missing or process steps or.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We just stuck to the minimum and
Just
adjust
to see
as
what you
little as
get.
possible
Yeah.
where it's needed only.
So this is the second attempt.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Whatever for brewing. Yeah.
This beer ever. Yes.
So have you done brewing before this, or was this your first?
Not this way.
Yeah.
Not this way. Home brewing. Yes.
Well, actually this way, like with a
Yeah.
kettle on fire, but in the kitchen,
Yeah.
which is a bit more controlled. Plus, you don't boil the grains nowadays. You filter them out before boiling it and putting in the hops. But
Yeah.
that step is also not included in the recipe, so
Yeah.
we don't know if they did.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're boiling the grains.
Yeah. And you said so. This is the sort of earliest known use of hops as well. That people start to.
Well, in a recipe, yes.
Yeah.
I do know that most people who talk about the history of beer are quite arbitrary about the use of hops, but this is about the common use of hops. Hops
Yeah.
has been used, especially in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
It has been used for far longer.
Mm.
And we know that it has been used on specific locations where it was abundant.
Yeah.
But here it didn't grow yet. And when it actually, I think it came. No, I think it came from Germany when it started to become more popular in Germany. It also came
Yeah.
to this region,
That would make
the
sense.
north of the country. It was a different route.
Yeah.
But we do know hops has been used for far longer. But here they had this mixture of myrtle, certain, we call it gin berries, I think, jeneverbes,
Right.
and some other herbs what was growing near. They made this gooey, sugary syrup. And they added it to the beer for conservation, but also for the yeast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm lacking the vocabulary here, but they also and they just added it after the brew, and then it started fermenting and get alcohol and become drinkable.
Yeah. So is this quite a low strength beer? Because I'm presuming you're not using sugar.
No, we're not using
'Cause
sugar.
we're pre-sugar here, aren't we? So there's no other sweeteners. You don't use honey or anything like that.
No, but we're taking the sugars from the grains, like
Yeah.
normal brewing.
Yeah.
The problem is, again, with the recipe, it only says equal parts of 2 grains, but
Yeah.
not the amount. So we can make it as strong or weak as we want.
Okay. Yeah.
And now we also don't know what the efficiency will be
Yeah.
of extracting the sugars. So
Yeah.
we're guessing that it will be about 4% as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
If it turns out a bit lower or a bit higher, it's still fine for us. But as a reference.
Are you still going to use like a modern technique, like a gravity check?
We
to...
tried yesterday. We tried
Yeah.
to measure the gravity
Yeah.
just for the experiment. But it was so sticky and gooey that we
It
couldn't
didn't
measure
work.
the gravity.
Okay,
It wouldn't sink
yeah.
in. So we have
Yeah.
no clue.
So it's just
Yeah.
going to be drinking and see.
Yes.
See if we get drunk.
Try from experience to guess
Yeah.
what percentage alcohol it contains.
Yeah.
That'll be
That-
fun.
Yes, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
So I guess you don't know how long that it's going to take to ferment or anything. You're just going to wait
The
till it
recipe
stops.
said after 3 days you can drink the beer.
Yep.
So we're going
Oh.
to try it after 3 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
On
then
Wednesday.
we will see if it evolves or not. But we're going to try after 3 days.
It's a
But
shame
normal
I'll be gone by
fermentation
then.
is always-
Yeah. Would have
we
loved
could
to
have
have you
tried it.
here.
yeah.
Yep. What we did when we had this recipe, which is quite vague. So together we sat together and with his knowledge from general knowledge from brewing, from home brewing, and my knowledge of stuff we have here,
Yeah.
we tried to work out the whole way of working.
Yeah.
And what is quite nice is that there was this beer historian who sent an email to Yvonne, who is actually living here for a couple of months, and said, if you're going to brew beer,
Yeah.
I'll be interested to be involved. And this is a man with a lot of knowledge about history of beer in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So he actually, she told him about us, and he came to us, and we discussed our whole process, and he gave us all a lot of feedback in order to get closer to the real medieval way of brewing.
Yeah.
And one of the differences is normally we only crush the grains, so the sugars can go out. But back then, they probably just brought it to the mill and milled it until they had meal. Is that the right flour?
Yeah.
And then they put that in their brewing. In their beer instead of the grains. Here this is a bit more into one piece, but they actually made it more into flour.
I'd imagine that would make for a cloudier brew though. Once the
Definitely,
more you break
yeah.
it down, it's
That,
yeah.
that it does. Yeah,
you're going to make it more difficult.
yeah.
Yeah. And so yeast-wise, you were saying it was a sourdough?
Yeah,
Both.
Both. Okay.
Sourdough and yeast.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
beer yeast plus sourdough.
Yeah.
Because it mentions two sorts of yeast in the recipe. And yeah, we discussed that probably it's a sourdough and beer yeast.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to use both.
Yeah. Which would be more like, is it the Russian beer? Is it kvass, I think? Which is,
Yeah, but that's
Usually
also
bread.
very low alcohol, I think.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm sure I tried to make it a long time ago and it wasn't particularly pleasant. Which is, I'm trying to remember how I did it. I think it was like slices of bread rather than grains, if
And
I remember
with
rightly.
sourdough.
Yeah, I
But
think
with
so,
this
yeah.
recipe, we're going to add some of the bread as well. We're going to add. We asked Yvonne, who's, as I said, living in the medieval way. The recipe mentions that you have to put in bread. Not how much, not what kind of bread. You just have to put in bread. So we asked her to keep the leftover bread that went stale, so we can add it to the beer, just to get us close to the medieval way, because she's baking it the medieval, I think
Yeah.
14th century bread, and that's
Yeah.
the closest we can get. And about the added yeast, that is actually yeast from a former brew. They just reused it, but it was quite new at that time that they started reusing that yeast. They didn't discover it yet.
Yeah.
As far as we know, they always they just let it made use of wild yeasting prior to that. But
So-
that's what I heard. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
certain.
I think sort of, yeah, from like Viking age stuff,
yeah,
I gather
more like
that at least
Vike.
the bread was the same kind of yeast as what was used in beer.
Yep.
But which way round that they got that? Because they'd have to know that you add flour to the dead yeast to reactivate it. Yeah. It's interesting thought process as to how they got there.
Yeah. Which way around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they start making beer because they were making bread? Or bread
Yeah.
because they're making beer?
That's a good question.
Yeah. It's a chicken and egg.
Yeah, it's like chicken and egg. You
Yeah.
can do both. Yeah.
But presumably, I mean, because even if you have a sourdough, that is wild yeast, isn't it? So that's
That is.
so they've worked out they can capture yeast somehow in the brew.
Yep.
Or at least they know something happens, maybe not knowing that there was yeast involved.
Yeah, they probably don't understand the science behind it, but you drink the liquor and go, oh, hang on.
Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
think it's
nice.
so-
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's probably how it went with wines and ciders as well. That they figured, hey, this fruit gets me nice drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the
After-
time, would this sort of thing have been done on a household scale, or is this something more commercial?
It was a household chore for women until it became an industry. It was a women's household task, but because it's an experiment, we decided to use a smaller kettle. Actually, this is for approximately it's a 20-liter kettle and for 7 liters of beer.
Yeah.
But normally they would have used a 100-liter or 200-liter kettle, and would have brewed for their own family, but also for like the neighbors and the neighbors of the neighbors. Then a couple of families could have beer for 2-3 weeks,
Okay.
and it's because it it takes a day of brewing where, of course, you can do some other household chores, but it does take a lot of time and work to do.
Yeah.
So they would cooperate with several families to do it.
And of course you've got to think of the fuel as well. Like if you've got a fire going all
Yeah.
day, like we buy firewood now, but
Yeah,
they would have had to have gone and felled trees and seasoned wood.
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
they did it on turf, which is found a lot in the ground here in the Netherlands. It's like, yeah, find it. It's the layer of when plants die,
Yeah.
then it gets some sort of gooey clay stuff, and if it's really dry, then it burns really long and really well.
Is that like peat?
Yeah, it's like
I think peat,
yeah.
yes, peat's
Yeah.
the right word. They did it fire with peat.
Yeah. Okay.
But still that's expensive and yeah, resources they were
So yeah, probably a bigger
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
But for the first experiment, we want to try.
You need to
rather
start on a small batch and see what happens.
And then if it's good,
Yeah.
we can scale up.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely
It's looking quite milky at the moment, isn't it? It's got that.
it does. Actually, I told him we had a commercial for milk called Milk the White Engine, and it's that's
But we're
how.
happy with it because
Yeah.
we know which color it will turn
Yeah.
into.
Can I get the spoon
then
maybe
the-
to stir it a little bit to see
yeah.
what's
Yeah.
happening?
So do you
Yeah.
say your background was more the home brewing
Yeah,
stuff?
I'm the home brewer and she's
Yeah.
the historian.
How long have you been home brewing?
5 years now.
5 years,
Yeah.
yeah. Is that mainly beers or do you do other?
Only beers.
Only
so
beers,
Far. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've experimented for about 20 years with brewing. Don't do much with whole grain. I tend to buy malt extract, which is
Okay. No, I
Skips a step.
That was the
Yeah.
first beers for me, but then
Yeah.
I have whole grain now.
and you have more control, don't you, over your overall flavours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for recipes, it's
Yeah.
easy if you buy big bags of whole grain.
I imagine cheaper too.
Might be, yeah.
Yeah,
But you have
I would
an
think
extra
so.
process step for yourself with milling.
Yeah, and then the labour and the wood and watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've made all sorts of horrible things over the evening thing. Because you grow vegetables, and so you start to look at the vegetable garden. What can I ferment? And I have a book called, I think it's called How to Ferment Your Garden. And it's like from the 60s or 70s. And it's got everything in there. And the worst one was celery.
Celery.
Celery wine, which it just tasted like
There's no
alcoholic
carbs
celery.
in there at all. No sugars or. is
You add
there?
sugar as well. Yeah,
Oh.
so it's more modern brewing than this, but it just tastes like alcoholic celery. So it was fine for cooking with, but for drinking,
Ew.
wasn't the best.
It's like you're having a vegetable soup beer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, great. I did a throw in. I do some home brewing, not by far as much as Niels, but
Yeah.
I once I was in the Dutch Caribbean. I got some relatives there, and I saw they were making this liquor with a so-called kadushi, which is a cactus
Right.
that grows there a lot.
Yeah.
And I saw them making a liquor out of it, and I was like, hey, I can put that in my beer. So I told it to my uncle up there, and he said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to get some from my garden. And he just gave me 2 pieces of
Yeah.
this kadushi, so I could take it home in a plane. I went home, and then I went to make a home brew with it, and I
Yeah.
put it in there. And it didn't end up how I wanted it, but it was a really nice beer. It was very dry and cider-like, actually.
Yeah.
It ended up rather nice. And that was, I'm more the one for, Niels is the one who is in controlled beer brewing, and I'm more for the wild experiments.
Yeah.
So that's why I told him, we're going to brew beer in the museum. That's fun.
No, it's a fun experiment. It's something as I say, I've not really done much with grains anyway, but I think you've kind of inspired me. I need to go home and try it. Yeah. Particularly in a more historic. I'd like the idea of like when they used to dip the hot rocks in as well,
Yeah, that's
And try
something
it.
I also still want to do.
which I guess
Yeah.
probably uses less energy, like wood-wise, if you're dropping
Yeah.
hot rocks in, which probably a way around not sort of using your resources too much.
Yeah, you need a small
Yeah.
fire to heat up the rocks indeed.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to make the same recipe twice and do one with hot rocks and one with fire and see whether you get
Yeah.
the same result.
That's an interesting experiment. Yeah.
The idea is that it also caramelizes the
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really intensely.
You get
Yeah.
the sweet flavors in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was last year. I wanted to do that with a couple of friends, but it was in August, and due to the heat, there was a big heat wave. We were not allowed to make fire.
Yeah, we had the same problem
Yeah,
last year.
so we were supposed to do it, but it didn't happen. We did brew on. We brew on gas actually,
Yeah.
just in a
Yeah.
kitchen tent.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, it did
It's-
work.
yeah.
The beer wasn't too good, but it was beer. It had alcohol, and I mean that's what we aim here. I mean we're trying out this recipe, which is great fun. I mean I feel like a child in a kitchen. You can just
Yeah.
try out weird stuff, and if it's going to be drinkable, then I'm totally happy. It doesn't have to be nice. It has to be drinkable.
Well, it should be like they had back then, but
Yeah.
we don't know how it was. So,
Yeah.
So if it might taste bad to you, but that
exactly.
might be what it tasted like.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
like what they are aiming
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, we have the same problem with any food that we're recreating, don't we?
Yeah.
We don't know whether they just enjoyed it that way or did they drink it just to get drunk.
Well,
Yeah.
about the beer, we do think because it's crossing from the use of myrtle, myrtle to hop, that they still added the myrtle because of the flavor. Because
Yeah.
myrtle has really a strong aroma. It's very herbal, and it's actually quite a nice smell. So we do think that they still kept adding it because they like that smell, and hops is quite bitter.
Yeah.
So we do know that they did like more herbal food and drinks than we are used to
Yeah.
right now. The Dutch cuisine is nowadays is quite bland.
Mm.
We do have a lot of influences from all over Europe
Yeah.
and also from former Dutch colonies, but the general kitchen is just potatoes and a little bit of meat and some vegetables and not too much herbs.
Yeah. I mean,
Not
I
too
think
much
that's probably the
spices.
same across most cultures, isn't it? It's kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The way
The Middle Eastern kitchen is quite spicy. They use a lot more spices. The former Dutch Indies used a lot of local spices. We added a lot of flavor to foods.
yeah.
So that
So the hops themselves, would they have been something that had to be imported from somewhere else?
the hops,
Yeah.
they could
They were
grow
growing,
here.
yeah, because I noticed you've got lots of hops growing
Yeah,
around. There's
some
some here,
growing.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's some up over by the longhouse. But
It-
were they naturally here and they just didn't know about them? Or did they bring them in deliberately?
I'm not sure if
No.
whether they did. I do know that it came from Eastern Europe through Germany to the south of the Netherlands. And I'm sure if they got the hops here, they should have started growing it here.
Yeah.
They probably did. What I do know they had. I can't remember the name of the mixture they used. There was a pretty big industry of the mixture they used for the beer. Hoe heet het nou?
Kruid?
Nee, niet kruid. Kruid.
Kruid. Ja.
The so-called kruid, the mixture that with the myrtle and the jenever, gin berries,
Yeah.
and that was a big industry here.
Yeah.
And later on, when hops became more popular, they started selling hops. And if it's growing here quite easily with our climate also back then. I can't imagine they didn't grow it here. And I do know that in this region, there's at this moment still hops being grown. but I'm not sure if it's been growing from the 14th century until now.
Yeah.
If it was already here, they might have already included it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So maybe it moved with using it, bringing it here to grow.
I do know that for industrial beers, in the breweries, they were prescribed what mix of herbs they were supposed to use and how much of which grain they were to use for their beers. And it was because the so-called gruit was used. It was a way of taxing people. If
Okay.
a lord wanted to bestow one of his fellow lords or friends or maybe an abbey, they got the gruitrecht, the right to create that stuff and sell
Yeah.
it. And they paid a hefty tax to the lord, of course, but they also earned a lot of money from it themselves. So it was actually a big favor if you were allowed to create, to have a gruithuis, a house being house. So it might as well be that people, breweries were forced to use this, and that maybe for home brews they already did use hops, but there's very little known about the home brews. It isn't written down because it wasn't taxed. So
No reason to write about it.
you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that the really old papers you see are always about taxes, people having to pay tax to this lord or that person.
But then without that,
Yeah.
you don't have your recipe to begin with, do you?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
how
not
did-
that many people could read and write
Yeah.
back then, so yeah.
yeah. I can't imagine the process changed much either. So even going back even to Viking age brewing is probably going to be a similar idea, isn't it? Although you're looking at hundreds of years later. I mean, there's not much to change. Even today, it's still very similar, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still with a pot, kettle on heat and heating up the stuff, adding something to preserve it and adding something to make alcohol from the sugars.
Yeah.
And you have to something that gets sugar out of it. If it gets the sugar, that's the grain in the processes.
Yeah.
Quite similar.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating though, isn't it? Like how far back beer goes, and yet we
Yeah.
don't really change anything.
Alternatives are a nice thing. It's effective.
Yeah, why change it? It's the
Yeah.
old if it isn't broke.
Why
Yeah.
change a winning team?
Mm.
No, I think that's what I like also with doing these kind of experiments, but also I'm sewing clothes and it's all very practical and well thought out. And that
Yeah.
when you start with this hobby, like reenactment or living history,
Yeah.
you kind of get to learn that and understand that there were just people like us. They were smart as well and they thought of everything. They just had different tools. So, but they did make use of what they had, and they did it very smartly, and that's what I like so much. That all of a sudden you get, it's like you get to understand that your ancestors were just people as well and smart, and I think that's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
you can't touch them, but you can kind of get to
Yeah.
have
you
a
get
hint
an idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also very comforting that they were just normal people.
Yeah. And they liked beer.
And they like beer, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I am happy though that it's no longer a woman's task to brew. To do the household, I can do other stuff.
We have a lot more choice now, don't we? I mean, the selection you guys had yesterday
Oh,
of your
beers, yeah.
modern beers,
Yes.
but of all
Yes.
different styles and flavors.
Yes.
And,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah. Yesterday, the beers we had, I brought them back from a cycling trip to a local brewery, which is from a Trappist brewery. They until 2 years ago they were actually allowed to have the official Trappist logo.
yeah.
There's only I think 18 breweries in the world that can have that logo of that trademark, and that just tells us that the brewing process has been overseen by monks from an order.
Yeah.
However, the last two monks overseeing the brewing process left the brewery about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So they can no longer be an official Trappist, but their beers are still very good.
And still brewed in the same style.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's
just the
centuries
same
of
beer.
experience
Yep.
Yeah.
perfecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we know is that the monks have been there for like the 16th or 17th century. So I'm not sure if they have always been brewing. I do think so, but
I
not
would
sure
imagine
if it's.
so.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
It's an abbey that's quite far away from other villages, other areas.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy to reach, and these monks got there to live in solitude.
Mm.
So they probably didn't have that much contact with the outside world.
Mm.
So it's a yearly tradition to at least go there once a year on bike, have a beer there, and then go back home. And well, they have this little store where you can buy a few beers. And
Yeah.
yeah, I brought some Abbey beers. As I said yesterday, we are here in Eindhoven on a perfect spot because the German border is near. We can get good beers from Germany. We can get the best traditional beers from Belgium, and we can get the best experimental beers from the Netherlands.
Yeah. So you got a good mix of.
Yeah,
Of
we're in a
styles.
really good spot here.
Yeah. So we'll do the same questions I ask every guest. There are 6 in total. So the first
Yeah.
question is, if you had an unlimited budget, what would be your dream project?
I would buy the prehistoric village.
This particular one,
Well,
or start your own?
maybe start my own, but then again, this place and the people have stolen my heart. So
Yeah.
maybe I would just give the management unlimited money to build it and make it as cool as we can, and just make me a housey in here so I can live a medieval life or try out all my weird experiments.
I gather the site's being extended soon, isn't it? Because you've got land that way, I was told yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's going to get a lot bigger.
It's
Yeah.
going to be twice the size.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even bigger with all
Well,
the money.
And with your unlimited budget, that's
Yeah, you can like triple or quadruple it.
yeah.
No, I'm not sure if I would like to live medieval way entirely, but I would like to spend my days on experimenting. I really like that. I also want to make strong drinks. There's all kinds of foods that I want to try out. I would be creating weird stuff
Yeah.
the rest of my life. Yeah.
And Niels?
I would go for a brew pub because I like both the brewing and also to serving it to people to make them happy about it, and then I can brew more because I can spread the beer and be experimental with different styles, and with unlimited budget you can just try, and it's always good.
It's a good answer. Yeah. So next question kind of ties into something you were just saying, is do you think you could survive on a Viking Age diet?
On a Viking Age diet.
Yes.
If they can, then why not?
I think I could definitely, especially because I have allergies. That would be much better for me to have at least a medieval diet.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to nightshades, which potatoes and tomatoes, and they didn't use it in the medieval era. I think I could survive on it. I'm not sure if I would really like it.
Yeah.
Because we have a much broader diet these days, of course.
Yeah. Well, the next question is there anything that you would miss if you were living on a Viking Age
I was
diet?
thinking about it. I think the coffee in the morning,
Yeah.
but you can get used to it, but that would be the first noticeable thing
Yeah.
for me. But for the rest, I don't know. I don't
The
think I'm
diet
missing
or the
anything.
lifestyle?
Diet. Just
oh.
around the diet, yeah. So any food or drink? Almost like something that you can't live without. that they wouldn't have
Cheese, maybe, but they
They
did
had
have
cheese.
cheese, but
had? But maybe not the same varieties and
no, but I'm
Yeah.
not picky on that. That they had beer,
yeah,
they had cheese, they had bread. I think I'd be quite a happy camper.
yeah,
Yeah. The things that I really like are there. I wouldn't
Yeah.
miss sweets after some time.
mm,
They, of course, they did have some sweets, they had fruits and stuff, but no, I think
Yeah.
I could live with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No chocolate, I could live with that too.
yeah.
I'd just be more grumpy some days a month.
That's
That's
what
all.
morning
Yeah.
coffee was for.
Yeah.
yeah. It comes down to, I've said this to people before, is it all depends how you interpret the question too, because is it that you're you now and you're aware of chocolate and coffee and things, or are you
Yeah.
a historical
If you
person?
grow up like that, then
You
for
wouldn't,
sure,
yeah,
because they won't be
Yeah.
complaining about stuff they don't know about.
yeah. But for the sakes of the question, it kind of assumes that there's something that you can't live without, and
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
The
Good
things I
rice.
wouldn't want to live without are still in the Viking diet.
Okay,
So that's
that's good. Yeah.
yeah.
I think when you're a reenactor as well, because you spend so much time eating the historical sort of type food, you're kind of used to it. Like we spend
Yeah.
most weekends eating Viking food, so like,
Oh, well, that's the thing. I've been served quite a few dishes that are medieval, also more prehistoric, and it's all delicious. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
really nice, actually. So yeah, I think I could definitely survive, and there's nothing I would not be able to live without.
awesome. What's the worst thing you've ever eaten?
Really have to think about that.
For like food, the most disgusting thing were maggots.
Ooh, why were you eating maggots?
You can actually fry them.
yeah?
Yes, you can fry maggots and add a little bit of spices to it, and the flavor isn't bad. It's just the idea what you're eating.
Yeah.
This, oh, the really worst thing I ate was the head of a springplan, a grasshopper, a dried
Yeah.
head of a grasshopper. It was a dare,
Okay.
and if it, I just if you say, do you dare to do this? Yes, I dare anything. So I did it. And it was disgusting.
yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
I'm thinking. I don't think anything that tastes bad. At least I can't recall anything.
Yeah.
But there, because it was quite recent last year,
Yeah.
it was snails. But then like picking them out with a stick.
Yeah.
And then you have to pull them, and it's like they're struggling, like holding on.
Yeah.
And then like gooey and sticking in your mouth. That was just the experience, not the taste, because they're flavored nice if they're cooked
Yeah.
in salt,
Yeah.
but the experience of trying to cook. And drinking pulque in Mexico.
Mm.
It's like the beer looked yesterday, but it's very sticky. It's fermented agave,
Okay.
but it looks like snot. So you have a cup full of snot, and you have to drink it. It also has chunks and stuff.
Oh.
The flavor is nice again, but experience is it's a hurdle.
yeah. Yeah. I find that. Yeah, it's textures rather than
Yeah,
flavors. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be food. If it
Yeah.
tastes disgusting, it's usually not food.
Okay. So next question is, what's the most memorable meal you've ever had?
Again, tricky. Thinking back the whole history of
So your whole
Life.
life.
Wow.
yeah.
I think the most memorable meal was when I was traveling with my father. I was making a trip through an island of Indonesia,
Yeah.
where my relatives, my grandparents had lived, and we were traveling from one place to the other, and I'd been quite sick. And at this tiny shack away restaurant, we were supposed to have lunch, and it was just like a shack with a curtain, and it didn't look like a restaurant, but our driver said, no, you can eat here. So we went there.
Yeah.
They had this huge kettle they were stirring, and it was chicken soup, and there was things in there, maybe all parts of the chicken were in there.
Yeah.
and it was the best soup I ever had. It was so flavorful, it was so delicious that I asked for seconds. And if you normally had given it to me with all the, yeah, like the paws and the, I don't know what all was in there, all kinds of parts of animals we don't add to our soup, but it, these days I would find it disgusting, but it was the best soup I ever had. It was so delicious. I never had any better.
Yeah.
That's so, yeah, that's this thing that immediately came to my mind.
Tricky. There's a lot of good meals.
Yeah.
Most memorable, I think, a Georgian supka. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
well, Georgian
Yeah.
food in general is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really tasty.
Yeah.
Supra is just big table full of people, and
Yeah.
then all the dishes, and they have amazing wines.
Yeah.
Also some stronger drinks, and yeah, just the experience of eating with a group is always nice. And
Yeah.
then the Georgian food, it makes
Yeah.
it a complete
Yeah.
experience. So that for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. There's one more question. Might come as a surprise, but you've died. Your family
Oh.
and friends are preparing your grave goods. What food and drink are you taking to the feast in Valhalla?
Well, beer.
This one?
We don't know yet because we haven't tried it.
Yeah.
yet. We have to wait 3
We'll
days.
just
Or
pretend.
just
Yeah.
bring
This
the
one.
kettle with
This one?
us.
Yeah. Or just all the ingredients and you can set up brewery in Valhalla.
Oh, even better. You can make
Yeah.
your own
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
heavenly beer.
Yeah.
Ooh. What else? Because it's like, can you survive on the Viking diet? There's nothing that I
Yeah.
couldn't live without.
Yeah.
So
I guess think of it more like your favourite
yeah.
food and drink. Yeah. And you got to beer pretty quickly. But
Yeah,
you might need some solid stuff to go with the beer.
In general, I don't get munchies or anything when drinking.
No, you
it
don't.
fills me
It's
up.
true.
So I can
Yeah.
survive on beer, especially this kind, but which is healthy.
Whole
healthy,
grains.
hearty.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. For a snack next to it.
I would know what I'd bring, but
I'm stuck at beer.
yeah,
Can't stop thinking about beer.
lots of beer.
Do you have an answer already? We'll come back to
Yeah.
you. We'll see if you can think of.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Well,
of,
yeah.
food next to it, but-
Yeah.
Before I started brewing, I was also at the board of this student bar. If you like beer, you're going to be a bartender. You get into the board, and when the bar closed, I got their archive closet. It was this big iron archive thing, and I got it at my home as a relic, and now I age beers in it. I put them away, these big bottles,
Yeah.
to age for like 5 years, and
Yeah.
then the flavor develops. It's so delicious. So I would bring all of those, my whole collection, to Valhalla.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
like a good glass of whiskey, so I would also bring all my whiskeys.
Yeah.
And I would bring lots of cheese and sausage and bread and stew, and that would gonna be like a party of weeks of eating and drinking, and
Yeah.
we need some music there as well. And
Don't normally do music. We can throw music in if you like.
yeah, sure, music. It would be like
Which band are you taking to Valhalla?
Don't bring the instruments,
bands
but the
into
artists.
Valhalla. Whoa, yeah, something happy and joyous. Like I like medieval music.
Yeah.
As long as people can go dancing and have fun, and I would be throwing the biggest party ever. And I'd want all my friends to be there, and yeah, that's when I die. I want people to go into my cabinets and get all the booze and drink on me, have a
Yeah.
toast on me, and
Yeah.
I want them to drink all my best.
Except for the ones you're taking.
Yeah, except for the ones I've taken.
You keep
Yeah,
those ones.
that would be. I would leave some for the people leaving behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
Yeah.
I actually thought on that question sometimes, like, yeah, if I die, I want people to get all my booze and just get drunk after the funeral.
That's nice.
Yeah. Do we have a food yet, Niels?
Nope.
No.
I'm still stuck at her party, just enjoying my beer.
You just come to my
No
party.
Just like, I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All food is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
You'll take whatever they've got there already.
I reckon
Yeah.
everyone brings the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll have a choice.
Yeah.
Enjoy the party there.
Okay.
You'll just ensure
Yeah.
that the beer is good.
Yes.
Yeah. Just sat in the corner with the beer. Just. Sounds good though. Yeah.
That would be my heaven.
Yeah. Alrighty. Yeah. It's a shame I'm not going to taste your beer because I'm off to Denmark tomorrow. But
On
Yeah.
the way back, you can drop by.
maybe that's an idea.
Are
Have
you
to let me know if
driving
it's good first.
through the Netherlands?
No,
on your
that's
way back?
I
objective.
think we are. Yeah. There is that. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're coming back roughly this way. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps take a little detour.
Detour and come and try the beer.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
put some in bottles. Just
Yeah,
to
we're gonna
spread them
bottle
also
some
to
of
other
it.
people who are interested, so
Yeah.
there will be some.
Yeah, I was saying, I'm definitely going to have to try it myself.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so much fun to only the process itself of drawing up how the hell am I going to do it,
Yeah.
and just then, yeah, it's a lot of fun. When I started talking to other people about what we're gonna do, well, we got this historian involved, but also some other people who said, "Oh, you should look at this or you should look at that." And a friend borrowed me a book about the history of beer in general, and that kind of, with all the knowledge that was added, we were able to get this all together. So the more people that think about it, the better.
Yeah. Are you
Be
able to let,
interested.
like, once it's finished, can you give samples to people that visit the museum or?
Samples, yes, we can't
Yeah.
sell it.
Yeah,
No.
Not
sure.
big gift cups.
Yeah.
And
No.
we also can't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
So
And it's
Yeah.
also,
it's at our own risk.
yeah,
We wouldn't be allowed to give out samples in England. Wouldn't be allowed.
we can only do it on people's own risk. And
Yeah.
with this beer, because it's there's myrtle added to it, we should, with women, be aware that they are not trying to get pregnant or are pregnant, because myrtle does something to the fertility.
Yeah.
It's not that
Yeah.
but in huge amount it was also used as a contraception, I
Yeah.
think. So they should be careful with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can let people try, but on risk.
Not if Niels doesn't drink it all first. If it's good.
We'll see. If it's good.
Yeah.
That's the thing, you should let other people have it first. But then again, yesterday I was the first to try the stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just, no, actually it
Yeah.
tasted nice. When we were finished yesterday and it cooled off a little bit, I just stuck in a spoon and
Yeah.
had a bite.
Yeah.
And it was really nice, but all the grains and their little, the
the husks.
vliesjes,
The husk. Yeah.
the husks,
Yeah.
they stuck in my mouth and I was chewing on it for like 5 minutes. It was disgusting, but the flavor was really good actually.
Yeah.
It was real
Yeah.
nice. So
Mm.
let's hope the beer is going to be as nice as it was yesterday.
Well, thank you both for recording with me. It was a last-minute decision almost, wasn't it? But
But it
I
was
don't-
Thanks
fun.
for joining our brew day.
Yeah.
it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
It keeps me out
it's
the
fun
rain.
to have you here.
Yeah. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Goodbye. If you enjoyed the podcast or want to hear more, remember to like and subscribe and give me a rating. For recipes and ideas, visit my website saxonforager.co.uk. I also have 3 cookbooks available to buy on Amazon worldwide. These are Eat Like a Viking Volumes 1 and 2 and Eat Like a Halfling. Thanks for watching.